Professor Saab, welcome.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, and thank you very much for accepting our request. And I'm looking forward to a very useful session. We are going to have about 70 people logged in. And the topic which you have picked up is very important. We really lack skills. So this would be capacity building in professional writing and communication, which is a weaker link in our work capacity. And I'm sure you must have gauged some of that in what you have been experiencing with our people that work with you. So on another note, we are working on the proposal to inshallah send another batch very soon.
Yes.
The advertisement closes on the 5th of November, and it could take a month or so before we will be able to conclude it. And then
Tamal has finished the pathologist.
Okay.
She just finished, and she will be heading back to Pakistan on the 30th or 31st of this month. Wonderful. She's the only female candidate in this, and she has published already 5 papers.
Wow.
So she's writing a short piece for my next newsletter, which will come published in December. And she just came and saw me yesterday and thanked me, and of course you, and the experience she gained, she says, has been tremendous. She ran out of a little bit time, so then we gave her additional scholarship to complete it. It's not her fault. She had some sickness, but also there was some issue with one of the experiments, so I recommended, and we gave full scholarship for her 6 months from UWA plus the tuition fee. We didn't bother you people on that, especially you were not there in the office, and I didn't want to go and request people on that. So she's boarded the flight. The other guy, Rafe, has already joined. Then, of course, Wasim, a wonderful entomologist, has joined. There's another guy who is finishing his plant pathology. He's almost to final correction, so he should be submitting soon. Then we have one person, Shoaib, submitted his thesis. He's a veterinary guy, but he's just waiting for the results to come. Then another 2 more. So all 100% success rate.
Great. We will, inshallah, send another batch and hope to continue this exercise as long as we could. And thank you very much for your mentorship offered to them, and then, the financial and emotional support that you have been giving to our scholars. We are grateful for that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to welcome and introduce our guest speaker today, Professor Kadambot Siddique. Professor and I have known each other for more than 20 years now, and we have worked together in human resource development. Professor Siddique is an agronomist and a breeder by training. He is director of Agriculture Institute at University of Western Australia. The University of Western Australia, formally we started working around 2010, when first time we introduced flood scholarship. 2 flood scholarships were awarded to 2 Pakistanis on a competitive basis. And then we were able to sign up an agreement in which we use some of our funds available for human resource development. And you have just heard Professor Siddique updating on the current status of scholars who are studying at University of Western Australia. Today, as part of this capacity building exercise, Professor Siddique and I have agreed on a topic which will certainly enhance our ability to become better science communicator in terms of professional writing and presentation, which is many a times a skill that can be perfected with practice, but learning from others is probably the faster process. And Professor Siddique, by the way, is one of the top cited people in the world. So that's bespeaks his writing career. And another news, which is not official yet, but unofficially it's already confirmed, Professor Siddique has been admitted to the fellowship of Pakistan Academy of Sciences, which will be formally announced in 2 months' time. So we are very proud that he has agreed to enter into fellowship program at Pakistan Academy of Sciences. And I have the pleasure of being one of the nominating fellows for Professor Siddique's fellowship. So with this quick introduction, Professor Saab, you have in your audience mostly associate professors and professors of the university. Some of you know already, some of them are alumnus from University of Western Australia, and there are others who could be our future team members in this training program. So over to you, sir.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. And thank you for your kind words and also the unofficial great news. I look forward for the formal thing, and I very keen work with Academy and also the University of Agriculture Science, Pakistan. We have already trained more than 12 PhD students. So the next batch has got 7 of that, 3 already reached or on the way, and 4 coming. So it has been a very productive partnership since 2009 when I first visited Pakistan, your university, and I have been there at least another 2 times. And there's a lot of collaboration still going on. Now I'm going to share my slides. Can you see my slides?
Yes, it's very clear. It's working.
It's very clear. Sometimes I have trouble. So when Professor Khan asked me to give something about the faculty building, capacity building, particularly for the early career researchers and also for postgraduate students, I thought, publish or perish. How can we maximize our chances to get our manuscript rapidly accepted? It's a game, and it is a very serious game. I'm so pleased to say that my first paper in Nature, I have published in Nature Plants, Nature Genetics, Nature Biotechnology, and so on. But the first research paper on Nature will come out on the 10th of this month. So it has been in the making since 2014 with the international consortium. So, and also this month we had I had a paper published in PNAS and another one accepted with a minor revision. So we are waiting on, but it takes a lot of time and effort to get that going. Those who have not known about the University of Western Australia, we are in the wonderful city of Perth, Western Australia. And this is the city, and you can see the Kings Park, about 1,500 hectares in the middle of the city, and the Swan River. All these red roof tile buildings are the University of Western Australia. It's a wonderful place. We don't have any COVID here, so we never had any lockdown masks or anything. I hope it will remain the same way, but not sure when the border opens what will happen. But we're rapidly vaccinating. So the state of Western Australia is very large. It is the second largest state in the world. The first one is somewhere in the Soviet Union, but a population of only 2.6 million people. Of that, 2 million live in Perth, the rest in the countryside. The University of Western Australia is a prestigious university. This graduates coming out of this institution gets high paid as well as in good positions. Perth is the most affordable city of ranked Australian cities. For example, Melbourne and Sydney are very much pricey and also congested in terms of Australian standards. The other point, when even the COVID was happening, the Western Australia has been fueling the economy of Australia, largely because of the large mining gold, coal, oil and natural gas, lithium, and there's a large reserve of uranium. So it's a highly mining state, but also one of the best agriculture states. We produce about 45 to 50% of the grains in Australia comes from Western Australia, largely dry land. So this is the campus, and my building and agriculture and the laboratories are here. And this is the Vice Chancellor's office, and those who studied and visited certainly will enjoy. Very quickly, and internationally recognized universities, various ranking, we are top 100. The most important aspect is well-established industry partnership. So we don't have agricultural universities in Australia, so we are part of the comprehensive university system. There are 40 universities in Australia. 8 universities lead the pack, what we call Group of 8, and UWA is one among them. And we had Nobel Prize in Medicine 2005 by Professor Barry Marshall. Professor Marshall is a medical professor. He's a graduate of this university, and is the man who proved that stomach ulcer is caused by Helicobacter pylori, not by stress. And he self-infected, treated himself, and that won him Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2005. A close friend of mine, and I have recommended, or in consultation with Professor Khan, it's likely that he will give a talk to the Pakistan Academy of Science. So it's up to Professor Khan and Academy to communicate with Professor Marshall. We are 16th in the world in agriculture science, first in Australia. So my institute has been fueling that. We were somewhere in the 50, but we marshaled, we managed to reach up to number 16 in the world and first in Australia. That was the 2021 ranking. And you can see that academic ranking of World University based on metrics, the number of papers published, ISI papers, the citations, the paper published in Nature, Science, and so on, and the academic positions, academic ranking, and so on, is based on that. This varies every year because of the tough competition coming from Chinese universities. So life and agriculture science used to be together. Now they separated from 2017 onwards. So we're 16 in the world, which is quite good for a small group of people. And number 1 in Australia, compared with the UQ, University of Queensland, is much larger group than us. So we are punching beyond our weight, and international collaboration is one of the major ways in which we can make our ranking up. For example, nearly 56 to 58% of the papers published in agriculture science at UWA has got more than one collaborator from nationally or internationally. I hope you can still see and hear me. Can everyone see my slides?
Yes, it's clear and loud.
Now, what is my credentials? It's not just to show I have got a lot, but it all started from a very low base. Published more than 500 papers, largely in ISI journals, and then books and book chapters. And of course, I don't spend a lot of time in short papers and abstracts and conference papers. Also, these days, I reduce the number of books and book chapters because it doesn't add much to the citation and so on. And as one of the things which you had to do, you had to review a lot of journal papers, and also I cut down the number of journals where I am the associated editor, or I was an editor in charge of the crop and pasture science before. As Professor Khan said, a highly cited researcher in agriculture science, but I was also told that I'm also high cited in the plant science, but that's again confidential. It's not out. It will be out on 15th of November. Did I pass the test? Probably not. Still, I've got a long way to go. I never focused where I publish, what I publish, but during the last 10, 15 years, I started focusing very clearly. I don't want to publish rubbish papers. I don't want to do any rubbish research. So the same way I pass that culture to my students as well. So the tips for young players, especially those who are published, it doesn't matter. The main thing is get started, get started, get started. I think that is one of the most important hindrance in writing. And I find this still most difficult stage. So I really put my bum on the seat and sit there and say, look, I'm going to finish this today, otherwise you will never finish. And there's no other way, there's no magic bullet. Keep writing, keep writing, keep writing, and you will learn more. Of course, you need to read as well. And there are so many distractions. People come and say, I'm so busy, I have administration, I have teaching to do, then I was not well, my computer broke down. Just excuses quite a lot. And the other thing is that people say, oh, when they come for their appraisal, they say, oh, I will finish 10 papers this year, next year. I say, look, don't aim for 10 papers. Make sure that at least 3 papers you finish. So make sure you finish, make sure you finish, make sure you finish. You will see people say, oh, I've started writing, I'll submit next year. And many people haven't submitted even after 5 years. So the second most difficult stage is finishing. The first one is getting started. So the next question is what to start. A lot of students or people come and say, oh, I want to collaborate, I will write a paper. I say, that's too late. When the students come to say, look, Professor Siddique, I want to work with you, that's the time I catch and say, look, if you're going to work with me, you are going to publish. If you're going to publish, you have to start thinking about a journal. Establishment of the hypothesis. Why do you want to do this research? Design of the experiment. If it's not properly done, if you don't know, you may consult with the statisticians, biometricians. Quality data. You need to think about it, because once you have finished the experiment, you have no room for going and collecting. Correct analysis are all important for successful paper writing. So basically, it starts well before you write your papers. There are people what we call perfectionists. I'm also a perfectionist. I want things done properly, very meticulous, on time, etc. But finally know when to stop experiments and set aside time to write. Particularly PhD students, they like to spend a lot of time in the lab or in the field, and they don't want to write. They get tired, they go home, eat some dinner, come back again, and the cycle continues, time finishes. What are the dangers? One of the dangers before start writing the paper is that once the analysis is complete, you finished your experiment, analysis is completed, you are aware of the result, and you think, oh, this is nothing new, the results are obvious, everyone knows about your finding, particularly if you have given a few seminars. The departmental seminars, some people present their results in local or international conferences, then the novelty is gone. So the temptation is a thing that is no longer worth publishing. What is newness? So I think one need to overcome that. So don't delay publication. And of course, you and your supervisor spend a lot of time, so you know it, but the rest of the world doesn't know. As far as I'm concerned, if you start a research, if you have no intention of publishing, then forget about it. Don't do that research. Don't waste the money. Of course, people will say that, oh, there are other things. I have released 13 varieties of grain legumes. I still go and talk to the farmers. You can publish, but you can also do the other thing. Both are not mutually exclusive. You can do both. So, oops, sorry. So let us prepare your results for publication and to maximize your chances to get your manuscript rapidly accepted. So the question first is that what to publish? This is quite often people ask me. So the full-length articles, research articles or review papers, 5,000 to 8,000 words, a series of experiments making a story, a coherent story. There was time when people used to publish short notes, but that's less and less popular these days. My advice to students and young researchers, it is better to publish one solid paper than split into 2 or 3 short notes or short papers. There was a time people used to say 1, 2, 3, etc. Those days have gone. It's better to publish good story, and any data, you can also put it in the supplementary. So it's not like old days, you cannot put the data, so the data can be deposited in the supplementary. And as I mentioned earlier, articles in books and reports are less prestigious. I always say that publish your primary data in international good quality journals. And once you have a theme built up, later on you can convert some of those things into a book chapter or book if you like. But don't go and publish your primary data into books and book chapters, because then you can't publish later on. So the next question people ask is where to publish. I follow this some of the rule. Carefully select the right journal in your area. Who are the editorial board? From which journals do you cite papers in your reference list? So that means at least there is a similarity there. And which journals publish on a similar topic? There's no point in publishing your paper in a journal which has nothing to do with agriculture. In our case. Final decision, a lot of people prestige impact factor. I'll come back to that. And also time to publish, check time between submission of the manuscript and publication. Even these days, many journals are very slow, particularly socioeconomic journals can take, even after acceptance, after proofreading, can take up to 1 year. Your experience with a specific journal, attitude of reviewers and editors. Once your articles started rejecting, sometimes they make an opinion that, oh, that guy not good, and people's perception. So you need to keep that in mind. These days, many journals charge huge amount of money, anything between $2,000 to $3,000 open access. If you don't have the funding, then how can you do that? So think about it. Good traditional journals are not charging, but you have an option. If you pay the money, they will put as a open access. Some journals also charges for color photos. All these things you need to decide and think about before even you submitting. If you don't have the funds, don't submit and waste your time. Now, many people know what is impact factor, IF. Put simply, it is a rough indicator for the quality of a journal in a narrowly defined discipline. Example, agriculture, plant sciences, molecular biology, or ecology. It's silly to compare impact factors between disciplines. This is really sad because some people, so for example, nature will be something 60 or 80. I haven't even looked at it. But don't compare nature impact factor with, for example, advances in agronomy, or let's say plant breeding journals or molecular journals. So the impact factor for 2018, how to calculate citation in 2018 to articles published in 2017. Let us say it is 270. And previous year is 2016 is 359. And the number of articles published in that journal in 2017, let's say 213, just an example. And 2016 is 189. So the sum is 402. So the calculation, citation to recent articles, which is the 629 from 2017, 2016, divided by the number of recent articles, 402. This is why the journals are very, very tough and strict. Good journals, the rejection factor is about 85%. 85% of the papers they receive are rejected. Either they reject right within the 6 days or 7 days, or it goes through a review process and rejected, or it goes through a major revision, then go through a review process and rejected. So there are some websites available to look at that. Now, one of the things is medical journals and molecular biology journals gets impact factor very high, whereas in the case of as soon as they publish, they get a very good citation and then it tails off. Whereas in the case of agriculture and other journals, when you publish, it takes time. So for example, I have papers published in 1985, 1990. They still get citation because they are classical papers, whereas the half-life of some of the molecular papers are very small. So the main message is that you can't compare impact factors across disciplines. So if you are in agriculture science or plant science, you go and look at the Thomson's ISI and look at the ranking of the journals and try to publish in the top 20% or top 10% of the journals in your area. Now, plan your experiments in such a way that the data can be published. This is so important for all of you, particularly the PhD students and early career researchers. A lot of papers, when I read, there is no hypothesis. They just simply put a name or objective. What is your hypothesis? And the sound question before you begin your research. Of course, the hypothesis you formulated at the beginning may not be the same at the end of your experiment. You can change that, but you still need to have a hypothesis or two hypotheses. Well, research without a sound hypothesis is hard to write, but sometimes there are good reasons to make an inventory. No sound hypothesis required, like there is no data available and you wanted to collect the data and publish that. So that's okay. You may not have a sound hypothesis, but I always say to my students, don't write anything without a hypothesis. Again, think 5 times before you start your experiments. And in fact, what you should do before you start your experiments, write, then present at the departmental or other avenues and let the criticism come from various people, go and change that. All our PhD students, within 6 months, they have to write a very comprehensive research proposal. And that proposal is very good because it makes the students to think, and it goes through a presentation, and then it goes through a committee. Then only you can really start your experiments. Well, data that have not been published do not exist. Some people say in various meetings, oh, I have done that research. So first question I ask is that, oh, where did you publish? Can I have a copy? Oh, we have not published. So for me, then that do not exist. If you do not publish your data, you might as well not do the experiments. In fact, the departmental heads and vice chancellors should take a stock taking and say, why spending the money and time? If you are doing research, you are a scientist, you are an academic, apart from your teaching and other duties, then don't give the money. I just very tough about it. I don't want to see if you have no intention of publishing, why you want to waste the space and laboratory. And the beauty about published data, it can make a lasting impression, and it is very useful for further research and the community who is funding our research. Michael Faraday said there are 3 necessary steps in useful research. As I said earlier, first to begin, the second end it, and the third publish it. So there are the 3 points which we must go. You may not publish in a year's time, but if you have 2 years of data, 3 years of data, stop research. Let us do a break and publish. I keep on telling some of the researchers, you stop for 1 year. I'm happy for you to support 1 year to finish, but you should have a plan, how many papers you will publish, where you will publish. Now, the structure of scientific paper, I'm highly biased towards the scientific paper, but of course, socioeconomic and sociology papers have got different format. Basically, authors and address, title, running title, some of them, abstract, keywords, introduction, and a lot of them want to separate materials and method, results, and discussion. I don't like people combining results and discussion. I think we should stop that. Keep results separate, discussion separate. Acknowledgements, references, tables and figures, and also supplementary materials. Most of this, you know. Then the question is that, where do I start? Of course, if I have a live audience, I will ask, where do I start? A lot of people sit there in front of the computer and start writing from the title, abstract, and so on. It's absolutely wrong. Some people start with introduction, absolutely wrong. So we must begin with the results section. This is very, very important because you may have done a lot of research, but you're not going to do all that in your paper. So unless you set the boundaries, the results section, no point in writing an introduction. Arrange your data in figures and tables, or the data best presented as figures or tables. You need to think about it. Decide which figure tables come first. So I sit with my PhD students or young researchers, say that, okay, let's have a meeting, bring your figures and tables 1 to 10, and properly drawn, various iterations. Then after that, I say, okay, let us choose from that and then you put bullet points under each figure and table. What is the key thing? Don't go and write. Some students go and write A to Z, and basically I had to completely chuck it out in the bin because it's rubbish. So if you having a supervisor, sit with them and go through the process step by step. Once you've done 1 or 2 papers, then you gain confidence. Decide the order of all other figures and tables. Make a structure for your results. Decide what you wish to describe. Design the sections in results in dot points before you start writing. Then make a structure for each section, dot point. Decide what you wish to describe in each section. So in other words, don't go and write from A to Z, just step at a time. So this is when you start writing. So some example, I'm just do quite a lot of work on root morphology, specific root length, root thickness. Next subsection is root exudates, carboxylates, and phenolics. Effect of root exudates on mobilization of phosphate. So here, effect of carboxylates, effect of phenolics. So you can just see how nicely I arranged that. And like that, you need to think a logical arrangement so the reader understand, like a storytelling in here. And a lot of people, English is not our first language, but we are lucky in both in Pakistan and in Australia. The British has had a huge influence. Write your results in the past tense. Avoid complex constructions. Some people write some sentences they themselves can't understand. So how can others understand? For example, the rate of photosynthesis was not very fast. Why saying that? Why don't we say the rate of photosynthesis was slow? Much easier, straight, no complication. I mean, nothing wrong with the first one. The other one I keep on telling is use the active voice. I remember my first visit to Pakistan, active voice. My first visit to Pakistan is remembered by me. There are quite a lot in the subcontinent people use like that. So please do not use that. I mean, rules does not mean that you should entirely discard the passive voice, but try to be simple and passive, active voice. Now, a lot of people come and ask me, should I draw a figure or a table? Let's go through that now. So here is the age and different organic anions, malic, malonic, lactic, acetic, etc. And there is a total value. Which one? Perhaps I like the figure because organic acids, then time in days, and you got all those things. So it's a choice between few lines in the text or a table. So let's look at that here. The rice yield was etc. tons per hectare for the farm. So of dong, zhang, cheng. So it's in the text. But I would put like this probably, dong, zhang, cheng, and then put the yield data in a tabular form. So these are easier to take when presented in a table than writing in the text. The question then is that, can we make that table clearer by altering the columns and rows? So I just rearranged. It didn't make any major difference, except it is an ascending order. Can we also arrange the same data in a different way? Arrange the farmers alphabetically. Oh, that makes sense, but that doesn't really make any difference. Who cares whether it is Cheng or Zhang? What is the story here? So there's no improvement. Well, increasing yield, that makes sense. So if people can immediately see that Wong had only 1 ton, whereas Shen had 4.2 tons. Then the question is that a lot of people put too many decimals. These are simple points, but silly points. So I think we could, in this case, we are talking about tons per hectare. So we could leave with 1 decimal. But include many decimal points as justified by the accuracy of your data and what measurements you are doing. One of the problems in figures and tables are that it should be self-explanatory. People should not be able to go back to materials and method. Every aspect to be standalone. So farmer, yield tons per hectare. That's getting better. So I've added average soil pH. So you can see that Wong has the lowest yield and also had the lowest soil pH. Shen had the highest yield and had the highest soil pH. Then some people make silly mistakes. You can plot it as a graph. That's not a bad problem, but I don't really think that it's a matter of opinion. I prefer the table which I just showed previously. The other thing people make is that they don't think very carefully. They connect the data points which perhaps are regression lines. So look at this one. How can you connect it? There is no scale here. For example, never connect a data point if the data on the x-axis are not scaled. These are all individual farmers. They have no connection at all. And this kind of mistakes comes quite often, and so as the pH. So that's a wrong way of doing any regression on that. And as I said earlier, describe what is shown. All figures and tables require appropriate legends. Do not discuss what is shown. Explain the abbreviations if you use any figures or tables, even when you use the same abbreviation throughout the text. For example, water use efficiency. You can't put on the table WE. You must say water use efficiency fully on the table or on the figures. Explain error bars. Some people doesn't say SC or ST. Number of observations. All these things should be added. Meaning of the statistical information. So 1 star, 2 star, 3 star. What does that mean? We know, you know, but we must still say what is its probabilities of significance. And there are a lot of things with regard to the SI units. So must use the most acceptable units, not the outdated ones. So for example, use milligram per gram rather than milligram per kilogram. This information is available in the website. I use that quite often. And there's available recommended preferred units and non-discouraged and acceptable units are there. Now let us look at the results. So figure 1, describe what it shows. Number of figures in the order of appearance. Table 1, again describe what it shows. Lead the reader through your data from figure 1 or table to the next. Arrange a logical flow from section to section. So the reader is really connected. You are really building up the story beautifully. Now, still we are not writing. So go to the writing the discussion section. Some people write discussion first before the results. Again, make a structure for your discussion. Decide what you wish to discuss. Design the sections in discussion dot point. So I ask my students and researchers, you just have some subheadings and what is the key finding in dot point? Then we can expand that, because discussion is considered as most difficult part to write. So once you have done that, make a structure, decide what you wish to describe in each section. But don't repeat results in the discussion and use in a wider context. And of course, you compare your results with those in the literature, then start writing. And of course, some people write their results and there is no take-home message. Finish with a paragraph which you tell the reader what are the main points, take-home message. Some journals want a conclusion, separate subheading. Some doesn't have, but definitely you need to have a strong conclusion so the reader get a lasting impression at the end. The order in the discussion may differ from that in the result. In the result, you may have in an ascending order, but in the case of discussion, you may come and start, yes, my hypothesis was proved correct. Then you may go a deductive mentality, that is, you can then, why that major result has come through, then you can do that. Figure 1 table, etc. Explain what they show, place your results in a wider context. How do your data compare with those in literature? I mentioned, and finish with the take-home message. So that's exciting. In fact, when people read a good discussion, people get excited, and then that gets cited very fast. Some more about discussion. A good research is excited about the result. You really feel very excited about it. Make sure the reader also gets excited. Explain why your work is important and exciting. Not saying this is the only work done in the world and all that kind of stuff. You really need to say what is unique about it, what is new about it, how does it make change the things, practices, or how does that the genetics going to work, and so on. Basically, you're trying to sell your data. Again, using of tenses can be different. Write about your own results in the past tense because you finished the experiment. Describe the published data in the present tense. Avoid complicated constructions. So, for example, the rates of phosphorus uptake were not significantly different. I would just say the rates of phosphorus uptake were the same. So simple. So we haven't touched the materials and method. This is again the problem. People go and write introduction, abstract, materials and method, results, and come to discussion. What we have done is, we have done the result very logically, then we wrote the discussion. Now you know the framework of your paper. Now, because you have done so many things in your research, you are not using all the methodology in your material method. You'll only focus to your paper. Otherwise, what happened? Some people write the material and method. Then when I read the paper, they have said something, but there's no result at all presented. It may have done during the PhD, but it's not a part of that paper. So basically, once you know which data you will include, write up all materials and methods used to acquire the data. Check if your methods work, recovery standards, reference, details of all modification. Some will say, okay, you modified the methodology by someone else, but you may need to give the summary and say what modification you have made. Equipment, chemical, manufacturer, city, country, these are so important and not to miss. Growing conditions and treatments. For example, I'll come back to that later. Species, Latin name, many people miss that. Authority and cultivar, or variety, or genotype, or germplasm. So include all relevant details. Check your chosen journal for how it is done. This is so important. For example, in Nature, you cannot write materials and method in the front. It comes at the back, same as in the PNAS. So you really have your results and discussion, conclusion, and materials and methods are in the back. Do not use modifier after, but describe what modification you made. Describe that someone else can repeat your experiment. This is the whole idea. If you precisely point out your material method, someone else can repeat that in another place, do other experiment. Some people write room temperature. So room temperature in Pakistan and room temperature in Perth, Australia is different. So you need to say, what is your temperature rather than room temperature? So it's a very meticulous job. In fact, if your materials and methods are not sound, no matter how beautiful work you've done, the journals and referees reject that. They will say, oh, we're just a bit worried about the materials and method, and the statistics are not right, so we reject this paper. So remember, some people go and write their introduction one night and come back and say, I finished my introduction. You're wrong. Don't write the introduction. So introduction is the next one. Briefly review literature that is relevant for your manuscript, because you already used those references in the discussion, so you pull some of those references back into your introduction. Do not just write this introduction for half a dozen people in Pakistan or in Australian colleagues, exactly the same field, but for a wide range of interested scientists. For example, dryland. You are a dryland system. We are a dryland system. About 42% of the global terrestrial area is dryland. There's 2.5 billion people in dryland. So if you do some good work in Pakistan, when I write my paper or when I do my research, I refer to that because that's a dryland. So think about more than Pakistan or Punjab, but think about international audience. So the introduction is nicely, because so important, you walk the people through that and the aim of your work and present a clear hypothesis. You can say overall objective of our study was this, but the hypothesis tested include 1, 2, or just one hypothesis important. So the summary, briefly review the literature, address a wider audience than exactly the same field, give the aims of your research and a good hypothesis. A good hypothesis is one that can be tested, but it does not need to be correct. So you can have, for example, let's say castor bean is saline tolerant, and you may define that, but when you did the experiment, you see, no, it was not saline tolerant. Or if it was tolerant to certain micromole salinity, then you may define that. So it's basically the fascinating topic. Someone just to take the paper and look at the title, then look at the abstract, and they say, oh, the introduction sounds very good. They broadly said rice is an important crop in 114 countries in the world, and drought is a major problem in Asia and other rice-growing regions. So we screened 100 local land races and looked at the genomic region where the drought tolerance QTLs are located. You know, this kind of thing really interest and build up. Explain why you did your research. Don't come and say there is no such work is done in the world, so I did my work. But you need to say why there is no such work done in the world. The fact that methodology has done it before, not a good reason. That's not a good reason. Your study may follow logically from previous work. There is nothing wrong with that. Your project may have been inspired by a practical problem. So in the province of Punjab, night temperatures are low, and when the rice flowers at that time, rice pollination doesn't occur. So you may start with that. There's a lot of work on high temperature and low temperature in rice, but you are really going to context on industry problem and develop a hypothesis. Then you show your good result. So basically, why did I do this? If you don't get it right, I can guarantee that the journal will reject your paper. References. Cite in a balanced manner, because sometimes we ignore a specific group. I hope there are no Americans sitting there, but if you go and look at a lot of the American journals and things, they don't look at anything else, you know, American Journal of Agronomy, Crop Science, etc. It's too much self-centered. And that's not good. You know, same. One of the problem in Pakistan or other parts of the world, you have your own journals and they are not in the Web of Science. So you can't blame me if I don't cite your paper. But if you published in a ISI journal, then we have to cite if it is there. So don't avoid opposition camps and groups. And self-citation, it is happening, but try to avoid as much as possible, because you know, you take a paper and then Siddique et al. And his group, then it can be bad. There are some journals now watching self-citation. And some people doesn't read the primary paper, they read someone else's literature or from a review, but they must have made a mistake and you pick up that mistake. So if I cite 40 papers, I must have seen all that 40 papers. Otherwise, don't cite it, because there is a danger. And of course, you can cite a review if you wish to refer to the fact that has been found by numerous authors. So several authors have found that, and then you put a couple of good critical review, so that's fine. Yes, I don't cite a lot of textbooks, but there are, say, Jackson et al. On the chemical analysis or the organic carbon analysis. That kind of old methodology has been developed, and it is in the classical textbook, so you may cite that. So the other mistake people make is that they don't look at the format of the journal. The referencing format is totally different for different journals. Order in the text and list, correct abbreviation of the journals. This is also a common mistake people make. And for books, people add name. If you don't add the name of the publisher city, not the country, then you end up in trouble. They will come back to you. All cited references in the list, when you cross-reference, A lot of references are missing. Don't depend upon EndNote all the time. EndNote can make a big mistake. So you need to physically check everything. And make sure that all the references in the list at the end of your paper are also cited in the text. Common mistake people make. So in other words, I must be very precise. Acknowledgement is very important. People and agencies who allowed you to write this manuscript. Supervisor, if not co-author. Some people go and say, Honorable Vice Chancellor, you don't need to acknowledge the Vice Chancellor unless the Vice Chancellor provided a fellowship or a particular thing. You expect that. You don't need to acknowledge the head of the school because head of the school did nothing. That's his part of her job. But if there is anything specific, you do that. Your supervisor, if not a co-author. Your technician, if not a co-author. Your colleague who gave some bright ideas or critically read your manuscript. Sometimes you discussed your experiment well before and you may acknowledge that. And then, of course, there are people who help with the language and editing and things. And if they are not an author, include them as well. Funding agencies are very important because some funding agencies want to get the permission before even you publish. And others, if there is any. Title, this is very important. It should cover the main aims or message because that's how people catch your attention of your paper. It should appeal to your audience, wider audience, not just in Pakistan or in Australia. It should not be too long, then message get lost. I don't like numbered subtitles. Subtitles may get lost and hence your paper may not be found in the searches. So the main title goes into the search engine. Running title, some journals also require a subtitle. It cannot exceed a certain number of characters and you check the instruction of that journal. And it should cover the main aims or message again. It can abbreviated version of your title, but not exactly the same. And the journal only print in certain pages of of the paper. Again, as I said, subtitles are not used for literature searches, so you need to get your main title correct. And it is therefore less important than good title. As I said earlier, use your actual title as a guideline. So we still haven't done the abstract. Remember, some people go and write their abstract even before they write their story. It should contain the aim of your research. Do not use reference in the part. Generally, people should not use references in the abstract. If you must use them, then all detail must be there as in the reference list, but without the title, because an abstract must stand alone, its own. And make sure that the main results and take-home message are there. Some journals prescribe, by the way, a little bit of an introduction, method, result, and conclusion. Keywords are very important. Choose a limited number of keywords, adequately cover your research. And also don't use the words that already appear in the title. So it's a different, so you get your paper widely exposed with the number of keywords. And also think of words that you would look for when doing a literature search. For example, if you're doing something on soil carbon, etc., you may look at the carbon credit or something attracts the attention of people outside even your area. And arrange in an alphabetical order. Many people doesn't do that. So you need to think about it. Abbreviations must be explained all the time. This must be done in a section within a separate heading abbreviations. Sometimes it's better to also have a separate table with all the abbreviations depending upon the journal. Again, don't use abbreviations or minimize use in abstract because it's abstract is standalone. Now, there's a lot of problem. Who are the authors and their addresses? In fact, this should be decided much earlier. Make sure that all authors have a chance to read your manuscript before you submit it. There's a lot of people submit. I have got a lot of problems with that. They submit and then all of a sudden journal contact you. Then it becomes embarrassing that you have not been consulted before you submitting. And as I said, never add an author if this person has not had a chance to read the manuscript. And include the name of the institute, laboratory where the work was done as the first address. And if you have got another address, you also add as a present address because you moved from UAF to another university. How do you present the names? Given family name last unless the journal specify otherwise. This can be a confusion in many of the subcontinent. So this is a different way done in some countries. What is the order of authors of your paper? The person who did the most work and wrote the manuscript should be the first author, senior author, or a student author. Corresponding author is the one that will be conduct for the journal, correspondence that may follow after publication, because there's a lot of work in that. That may be the group leader, for example. Senior author and corresponding author can be the same person. The research team leader appears as the last author. These days, a lot of my papers from my lab, I'm the last author, and I mean, that's how, and probably I brought most of the money as well. What are the frequently made mistakes? One of the biggest problem is invalid and improper statistics. Get it right. For example, presenting linear regression when one axis is not scaled. Sites, species, farmers, as I showed you. Units lacking in the table or figures. Incorrect units, seconds, not as Siemens. Use kg, not kg. Millimoles per meter square per second, not millimoles per meter square, second per meter square. Milligram per millimole. All those things are small, but it can lead into big trouble when you submit your paper. No numbers or legends for tables or figures. Even page numbers, people doesn't put the page numbers in the paper. And some journals insist, and I like line numbers, because if I'm the reviewer, if I want to say page number 25, line number 140 to 160 doesn't make any sense. So because I don't want to annotate, then my name will be seen by the author. So low, people write very negative. Not high, water potential. These are some of the cited reference not given in the reference list. Incorrect slopey style of referencing. The data shows instead of data show. Anthropomorphic reasoning. Plans struggled. Too many decimal places. No space between values and units. This is very common. So for example, 20 meter should be 20 space meter. But 20%, people write 20%, not 20 space percentage. Same, 10 millimoles per meter square second should be 10 space. Very often people make mistake. Something you must never do. This is a big problem. A lot of times people get caught. Never copy whole sentence or paragraphs without referring to the original text. This is called plagiarism. It is one of the worst crimes in science. And as a university, professors, we face that very often from students, assignments, and so on. It will make you bad when discovered, which will probably happen these days. It may ruin your scientific career. Just don't do it. Some journals will bar you from publishing in that journal forever. And then the news gets around from journal to journal. And these days, there are programs available. Professor Khan, I'm sure you can buy some of them, called Similarity Index and other things. So you can then help people to avoid plagiarism. And there is a lot of fraud in science. Publication of results that you have not really acquired is considered fraud. There are very good examples. Scientists have published results that were copied from other journals. I've seen that as an editor. And then in that case, I wrote to the scientist and told that I will not tell anyone, and also not tell your head of the school or a vice chancellor, you better stop this any year after. Other scientists have published results that were not really based on actual experiments. You have heard about this from Korea and many other places where people just simply developed data based on hypothesis and published. It is one of the worst crimes in science again. You will be caught. Just don't do it. Finally, a few comments on language and the structure of sentence and paragraphs. A few hints. Avoid complicated sentences. If you cannot understand what you're saying, how can the readers understand? As I said, too easy to do when using your computer program without checking the dictionary. Do not make sentences that are too long. Break into shorter sentences. Use a spelling checker and use either UK English or US English, but not a mixture of both, which I find quite often within students. This is a billboard, signboard from China. You can already see some of the things. Spelling checks pick up mistakes, but not all. So don't rely on spelling checks from your computer. Sauna, it's called sauna room, but it is sauna, should be. Barber, it's called barber. Borber, B-O-R-B-R, barber shop. Ball, bowling room, ballroom. Guest lift, it's a guest lift. So it didn't pick up, the spelling didn't pick up, it's correct. So the mistakes are there. Exit to. Conversation, it's called conservation. Dangerous, endangered. So actual exit to conservation of the valuable, dangerous desert plants. So you can see how the mistakes were made there. So exit to conservation, dangerous, endangered plant. The information that begins a sentence establishes for the reader a perspective of viewing the sentence as a unit. So how to construct a good sentence. So a sentence, regardless of the P concentration supplied to the other root half, the P concentration root half supplied with the 1 microper law. So how can you write that? The P concentration in root half supplied with 1 unit were low, regardless of the P concentration supplied to the other root half. So it's a better way of telling. So the important part is placed at the beginning. Therefore, that is the sentence order you should use. So you always come up with the important part and then the second important part next. And always beginning with an exciting material and ending with a lack of luster often leaves us disappointed and destroys our sense of momentum. Therefore, the structure of a discussion should be both logical and exciting. Begin with a brief overview of the importance of your finding to start with. Continue to explain the rest in context of the literature. Hide what must be included, but it is not really exciting. This can be done by presenting in a table in results without further discussing in the discussion. Remember, you are not going to discuss all the results you presented. It's there if someone wants to go and check, but it is not as important as other bits. So finish the most important and exciting aspects in the take-home message. No need to use the same order as in the result. So the structure of a paragraph, text is organized in paragraphs. Paragraphs have a distinct structure. They are not arranged so as to have a certain number of sentences or lines in every paragraph. And you try to use a topic in one paragraph. Don't mix too many ideas in one paragraph. And of course, remember, paragraphs begin with a sentence that sets the scene, an introduction to what the paragraph is about. And the paragraph finishes with a conclusion, a sentence that refers back to the first sentence. There are a number of websites useful to place commas, synonyms, and explanation of the words. Elements of Style, that's a good website. Website of Rogers 1, Flowers Dictionary. Now, we almost finished the paper, but still not done. It's like having a baby. It takes time. Check the instruction for authors again. Did you follow all the instructions properly? Many people do not follow. So then what happens? Prestigious journals look at it. Either they just reject or they send it back to you. It's an embarrassment. Then you're wasting another 7 or 10 days. Remember, it's not the task of the reviewers or the editor to take care of the detail. You should have checked yourself. Don't rush. Your manuscript may be sent back without review if you have not addressed these items. So the section editor or the managing editor thinks that this guy or lady doesn't even look at the things, so I'm not really going to worry about this paper. So again, check carefully. Ask a colleague, friend, or a discussion group to review your manuscript. For example, you are the senior author, you spend a lot of time, and then ask someone in the second to look at it very carefully with fresh eyes. And at many times, their suggestion may lead to elimination of small mistakes and improve the readability of your manuscript. So let us send it off and wait for the editorial decision. These days, it is much easier. During Professor Khan and our time as a student sending, we had to use the typewriter, send it, then it takes time by email and so on. Now it's very fast. You should receive a note from journal that your manuscript has been received. You don't get immediately, at least within the next couple of days. And if this doesn't happen, check with the journal. After several weeks, in times months, you will receive the editorial decision, and you can track that these days through the ESS system. If this does not happen and reasonable time, check with a polite email. Accepted without revision. What is the decision? Extremely rare. Very, very rare cases. I had few cases. Accepted with a minor or major revision. Rejected without an invitation to resubmit your manuscript. Some people, once it is rejected, they think that they can still submit there. If they have not invited back as resubmission, try another journal. So this is also a biggest problem. When you get a minor or a major revision, what should you do? First of all, don't get overreacted. When you get it, the first reaction is that you think, oh, it is done by Kadambot Siddique or Ikra Khan or someone. Don't think about that. You got something, you just breathe, don't even look at that. When you calm down, have a look. You remember, the reviewers have spent time on your manuscript, and you must give all their points careful attention. Make the requested changes if you consider that these changes are appropriate. Very important. So what I normally do is that download all the comments and then put them into bold and referee 1, point 1, and then start responding beautifully before you even change in the manuscript. And you must explain a letter to the editor why you did not make any changes. You will need good reasons why you did not accept the comment by that referee. Return the revised manuscript with the covering letter and response, point by point response, as soon as possible. Some journals say within the next 2 weeks. Some journals say within the 60 days. So don't send it back next day itself, because that means you have not gone through. And there are people get angry when the manuscript is rejected. Don't write an angry rebuttal to the chief editor. How to write a rebuttal letter? Be polite. Thank the reviewers and editors for the time they have spent on your manuscript. Explain your case clearly. Accept the editor's response. Respond when a manuscript has been rejected without any invitation to resubmit. Carefully consider the critical points. Use the critical points to improve your manuscript. You may need to read more literature. More experiments may be required. Revise your manuscript. Resubmit your manuscript to the same journal if invited to do so. choose an alternate journal if not invited. The paper which I mentioned previously, the one which is coming in Nature, we started the experiments in 2014, and then we submitted it more than a year ago, and it gone through 6 reviewers. It came back, and when we addressed that, then 3 reviewers come back, and we had to do 6 months of work. And then it became 2 reviewers still wanted to do some more. And then we did it. We submitted. The reviewer accepted. 1 reviewer still saying few critical things. We addressed, and then editor decided to accept it. So I'm just saying the gravity and the time needed for some of them. Never submit your manuscript to an alternative journal without appropriate revision. You know why? The world is so small. For example, if I rejected your paper in, say, Field Crop Research or Journal of Experimental Botany, you submit it to Plant Cell Environment, and the chances are that Plant Cell Environment will send me the same paper because that is in my area. Then I look at it, you have done nothing, you simply resubmitted, reformatted. Then I get very angry and I will reject that again. So remember that. I used me as an example. So you've done the revision, you wrote a good letter, response point by point, send it off again and wait for the final decision. So with the right aptitude, it is just a matter of learning a few tricks. Thank you, and happy and successful writing. I finished, Dr. Khan. I hope you have all seen my slides and I didn't take a lot of time.
It's been a marathon. Wonderful. You have covered every possible detail that a writer needs for being a scientific writer. Thank you very much, Professor Siddique. And let me see if there are any questions. There is one question from Farah. Okay, Farah, go ahead. Please unmute.
Thank you, sir. So, you elaborated a very comprehensive explanation is given about the research papers. What are the qualities of a good review article? If you want to, yes. What should
so the more or less the same, but basically the first thing is that a review article is compiling an area of research, and then you critically analyzing and then coming up with some common themes and new directions. So it's not simply repeating what people have said. First, you need to look at, is there a need for a critical review of that topic? When was the last review done? For example, I'm in the process of writing a review on salinity tolerance in wheat. When I looked at it, there has been some reviews. The last review was way back, and there has been advances in genomics and other areas. There has been use of physiological traits in the breeding program. So then I said, look, there is a need for that at the moment. That's one approach. The second one is you get invitation from prestigious journals like a Journal of Experimental Botany or special issues, they ask you to do it. So that's how you do it. So it has to be critical. Simply going and writing a bunch of papers is not going to help. So in fact, a critical review can be as more difficult than writing your own research articles.
All right.
Or you may have topical issues. So we just published one in Nature Biotechnology on breeding and how we can accelerate breeding. And it's very, very, very tough. They can only have less than 2,000 words. So think about the critical area. What is the gap? And then you may reanalyze some of the data. You redraw certain things, and then look at some of the pitfalls, and then you point at the right direction and get some message. And good reviews will be cited. So one of the things about high cite, good review articles get cited faster than your original research.
Sohail Sajid, please unmute.
Thank you very much, sir, for a nice comprehensive talk on scientific writing. So I was having a query about the author's sequence. When we go into the European countries or USA, usually the person who is doing bench work, he's the first author. And then who is providing the resources and mentoring the students, they come probably on the second last or the last ones based on the seniority. But when we come back to the to Pakistani institutions, here there is a fight of that if you are first author, then you would be able to get the reward of it. Otherwise, you will not be anywhere. So my question was that is there any point where all the countries can have a synchronized thinking that this should be the rational approach as far as the writing is concerned? Thank you very much.
Yeah, so it's a good point. As I said, I spent a little bit of time on that. I don't think we can have a one fit for all. For example, in mathematics, they follow a tradition of alphabetical order of the surname. Then, in fact, the first author may not be the senior, the person who did the most. So, as a thumb rule, the person who did the most of the work plus the first drafting should be the senior author. That can be first author and the corresponding author. And also I encourage, so if you go and look at my publications, when I was much younger, most of my papers, I'm the first author because I did all the work. I did start the writing. And then as I became older and senior, I don't really go into the lab much at all. I can't do much in my capacity, but I do make sure that I do spend a lot of time looking at the result, helping them guide. So I go at the last in my case, or second last, depending upon. So there is no hard, fast and rule. I think the first few authors are important, especially young people should take the lead in writing. Otherwise, when you go for a job interview, people won't take it seriously. That you as a young person, how come you are somewhere in the middle, meaning you have not really contributed. But in a paper like Nature, it's pretty hard at 25, 30 people. So the Nature Biotechnology we published, I'm the last author, and the first author is from ICRISAT, India. The current paper coming, I think I'm the third last on the 20 people on the list. So I think basically discuss those things well before. If someone says, I want to be the first author, if that person did all the work, give them a chance. But chances are that many times they don't even write it up. And then it becomes other senior colleagues' headache to do it. Many times I have written up, people left. So, but discuss these things well before so that no controversy, you don't need to then take the matter to the vice chancellor and so on. Sit down in a room and discuss it. For example, we had a larger project in India where my postdoctoral fellow was the first author. We all sat in the room and decided that alphabetical order. So Kadambot Siddique, S will become somewhere else. There was a director of an institute there, Ali A. So he became the second author. Of course, he was the director, but we agreed that he's also part of the team, but he was a second author. In that case, we decided in alphabetical order. It became difficult who will go second and third, and we all agreed that we had to live with that.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I would have to break here and share with you that fortunately I have in my office Sayyid Hussain Jahania Gardezi. Professor Siddique Gardezi Sahab is our Provincial Agriculture Minister. He is our alumnus and he is also Pro-Chancellor of the university. So I take this opportunity and would ask you to introduce yourself to him and tell him a little bit about our
Collaboration.
doing together. Sir, over to you. Professor Siddique.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Alaikum salam, Professor Siddique. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. How about you?
I'm good. And
Yeah,
will you let me know about your project?
Yes. we have been collaborating with the University of Agriculture, Faisalabad, since 2010. 2009, I came there. And we have to date trained, I think 12 or 14 PhD students from UAF, Pakistan, with a half funding from my university, University of Western Australia, half funding from Punjab government and through the UAF. Currently, I have 7 students. Of that, 3 have gone back and the other 4 are coming back. It has been a very good collaboration in terms of PhD training in agriculture and related areas. And they all got the job back in UAF, Pakistan. And also we have done a lot of research together, published together. I also brought many Pakistani researchers from the UAF and other universities where they came here for 6 months using HEC, Higher Education Commission of Pakistan, where we have an MOU on, and come here and train and they publish and go. We also signed a MOU with the Higher Education Commission, and I have visited Pakistan 3-4 times, and also Professor Khan and a number of others visited, constantly in touch with the Pakistan High Commission in Canberra. So generally, my university is regard Pakistani students as one of the high quality students, particularly in our area. So everyone says, the other day I was with a professor and he just finished Tasmal. She's coming back on Sunday back to Pakistan. So he was saying that give me more students. And so the good thing about Pakistani students, they are very hardworking, highly numerical skills. And so we don't have any problem. I think I'm hungry to train more students from Pakistan through this program.
I'm really glad that our students are doing very well. And we would also like to send more students for PhD programs. And I also understand that hard-working PhD student is an asset for the university where PhD program is undertaking. And we would like to enhance the cooperation, and Dr. Israr, since he is again the Vice Chancellor of the university and is holding the reins, I hope that this program will further extend. And it's once again, I would say that it's very encouraging that you are asking for more students from Pakistan. And,
yes. And Minister, we also will make sure that dollar to dollar we match that. So I have, my Vice Chancellor has agreed that once we go through the selection process, by high quality students, we are not expecting Pakistan to pay full. So I will deal say that we will come up with half, and it has been working very well. We have an MOU. There is no problem at all, and the students selected from Pakistan has been good. Many times I came there and interviewed the students, and we haven't had anything gone wrong.
I appreciate that they'll be paying half the fee and yet working over there, and they will, I hope, contribute there at university as well, because PhD student is one who can contribute positively, and I expect and hope that students from Pakistan will contribute to your university as well. And
absolutely, all the papers they produce, we make sure that they have both bylines, my university byline and UAF Pakistan byline. The other thing is that all those who have come back, they're doing extremely well in UAF Pakistan as the next generation of researchers and professors.
Yes, we since we have set up more universities, more agriculture universities, we need more qualified people for our faculty, and there is a lot of demand, and it is increasing with time, and we would appreciate this program. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
and it's not only in agriculture, but also we have been taking students in computer science, engineering, mathematics, and physics, and other areas as well. So although
yes, like agriculture, we need more qualified people in all the fields of engineering as well, because engineering, agriculture sciences, medical sciences, these are the future on which our nation depends on. And if we have more qualified people in these areas, we will definitely be adding to our value.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure to meet you, and thank you.
Okay, Professor Siddique, it's been a wonderful session, and I hope that the participants have, taken advantage of your extremely well-prepared lecture. And we will direct any questions in future as well. And
You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
okay, sorry. So I will keep you updated on this selection of next batch, inshallah, very soon.
Inshallah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and good night. Alaikum
Good
assalam.
night. Good night.